Shri Krishna Vagishayatishwarabhyam Samprapta Chakrankana Bhashyasaram Shri Notnarangendra Yatau Samarpitasvam Shri Krishnamaryam Guruvaryamide Virodhe Kartike Mase Shatatara Kritodayam Yogacharyam Krishnamaryam Guruvaryamaham Bhaje Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Om Mayi Medham Medham Mayi Mayi Prajam Prajam Mayi Prajamite Prajam Mayagnihi Agnistejaha Tejo Dadhatu Dadhatu Mayi Mayi Medham Medham Mayi Mayi Prajam Prajam Mayi Prajamite Prajam Mayindraha Indra Indriyam Indriyan Dadhatu Dadhatu Mayi Mayi Medham Medham Mayi Mayi Prajam Prajam Mayi Prajamite Prajam Mayi Suryaha Suryo Bhrajaha Bhrajo Dadhatu Dadhatviti Dadhatu.
Namaskaram. Good evening to all of you. I have great pleasure in introducing Mr. Raghu TV Ananthanarayanan, the speaker of today's evening. In 1981, somewhere in 80s, 81, when I started getting interested into yoga, I went around a few yoga schools and I used to collect a lot of books on yoga. And almost all the books that I had taken or in those days will have always plates of photographs of pictures in either black and white mostly and all that. There was a first book that came without any pictures, and that book was called Religiousness in Yoga. It is actually it is a book not written by Desikachar. It is a collection of the lectures that he gave in Colgate University, and it was reviewed in the Hindu in 1981. And it was a very big review. After reading the review, I got a copy of the book, read it, and one of my friends brought me to Sir. A speciality in that book is all the diagrams were done by Raghu Ananthanarayanan, and I think Now we have got stick diagrams after Sir started, and now we have got computers to do them. In those days there was no computer drawing. I still remember visiting him once for the second edition. He had a drawing board in which he was drawing some pictures. Raghu Ananthanarayanan did his masters in IIT, and his master's topic was on management of back pain using asanas. And he is a senior most of the students of Desikachar. In 1881-82, around when I got into KYM, I remember we were together, me, Lata, Balu, and a few others here. Now presently he is having his own organization, Ritumbara, bringing together yoga and inner work, and he also has two consultancy wings, Sumeda's Academy for Human Context, Applied Behavioral Sciences, Flame Tao Nowhere, consulting in organizational culture and transformation. I remember that they have been using Yoga Sutra extensively, particularly in corporate management and all. So I request Raghu to talk to us. Thank you.
When I agreed to talk, I didn't think it would be so difficult. When you were chanting, the first thing I remembered was Shiksham Vyakya Syamaha and all that when we started chanting with Desikachar a long time ago. See, when Desikachar passed away, I remember Prabhakar and myself, we were talking about this, and for both of us, his passing was more difficult in a way than the passing away of our own parents. And also, when I was thinking about what to say, the word that kept coming in my mind was we. And who were the we? Suddenly struck me that we would mean myself, Prabhakar, Mukundan, Lakshmi, and Lalita mostly. That's the picture in the mind. So a lot of the memories of what happened in the Mandiram, and we used to call it Mandiram, were of us in various interactions with Desikachar. And we would spend almost the whole day, so more than a decade, we were day in and day out, in a sense, interacting with him. See, one of the things that to mourn somebody is actually very difficult, and especially somebody you've been with like this. And I had a dream on, I think the 9th day, the ஊனக்கல் எப்போ எடுப்பாங்க 9ஆம் தேதி 10 நாளா 9 நாள். So the night before that, my father passed away. After my father passed away, I had a dream, and the dream said that whatever seeds are sown in you, whether they were sown in provocation or evocation, they are yours, and it's up to you to make them grow. And my relationship with my father had more provocation seeds through provocation than evocation. And with Desikachar, I guess it's mostly evocation. So the way I think one pays tribute or mourns somebody like Desikachar is to really see how the seeds that they've sown in us, and He's sown seeds in so many of us, are nurtured and how we make them grow. Yeah, I just put together a few things that I thought might be interesting to share. Yeah. One of the things that has stayed with me very deeply, I don't remember where exactly this happened. I think there was some discussion Desikachar was having with some of his students when the question was, who is the right person to learn yoga and whom would you trust with yoga, some such question. And I remember the answer he said. His answer was, if a person is really concerned with the condition of man and the sorrow of the average person, he is the person who is worthy of being taught, and he is the one who can really nurture yoga. And to me, this is a very, very powerful and extremely important statement, because often we see people coming for yoga, which is very personal, which is fine to start with. Nowadays you see that there's a lot of innovation happening in yoga, which is strange kind of stuff going on. And one wonders how many of these people have a concern beyond themselves. And if you're using asana and pranayama and your concerns do not transcend yourselves at some point of time, would it be yoga sadhana at all? And I think this is an extremely important question that he has placed. And in a sense, it guides me all the time. The other idea, a very central idea of his, was that each person is unique, and the entire teaching process ought to be one where you enable your student to discover what is unique and for them to be able to nurture this uniqueness in themselves. And if I go back to my own learning with him, or what I've seen, the way I've seen him deal with people, it's amazing how perceptive Desikachar was and how he would really enable people to come out with whatever he saw in them. And often he would see things in people that they hadn't seen in themselves as yet. Yeah. And one of the key things that I think is part of this is for one to be humble about this gift, right? And the only way you can nurture this gift is if you're humble about it and if you're honest about it. Okay, and being honest about it definitely means you're not playing at humility. At the same time, being honest to the gift doesn't mean you're overplaying it and selling it and things like this. And I think this is something else that anyone who's seen Desikachar through the years would vouch for in almost everything he did. And there are many times when, I don't know if Sridhar remembers this, that once there was a new building that was being, there was near Kottivakamala, there was a place, and then there was a consecration process going on. So like Desikachar does often, he suddenly said, "Why don't you come and carry the kalasam?" So I had to carry the kalasam in my head and go around, and the place was full of thorns. So the thorns were getting caught in my veshti, and before you knew what was happening, Desikachar was taking it out of my veshti. Okay, he hadn't even thought a moment about what was happening. And I don't think, even the word humble also is a very strange word, It was simply that he spontaneously did something which was right at that point of time. Right? Anybody else, I guess, would have had an idea of being a teacher and my being a student or some such thing. I think all of that was just not there. It was just a bad situation where my veshti was getting completely caught up with thorns, and obviously I couldn't walk. I couldn't take this off either. See, I was hanging around like this. Yeah. And, these are moments which are in many ways extraordinary. And they're extraordinary because they're so simple. And there are many such times when, when you're with Desikachar, it's just a simple, small thing that happens here or there that really triggers something which is very profound. The other critical thing, I think, has always been his idea that you stay with the core and you keep on learning. Yeah, and if you look back at what Desikachar did through his life, he was very true to what he learned from his father. But he was always experimenting. Yeah, and like Sridhar was saying, almost every bit of my learning has been as much from working with him in classes as it has been in doing projects. So the first project was illustrating religiousness in yoga. And when you do a project like this, with Desikachar, it's not a straightforward thing. So he gave me the book and said, okay, you know how to illustrate, let me see what you can do. So I read the book and went back saying, can we do this here, can we do this here? So the answer is not a straightforward yes or no. The answer is always, why this, why not this? So I have to go back, work with it, and come back. So the learning through this was quite intense. Yeah, and a book, I don't know how many of you have had a chance to read the original book. It's a phenomenal book. Yeah, and I think the next thing that we worked on was my book on children, if I remember right, or maybe I'm not sure about the chronology. And again, here we worked for years. It was about 3-4 years before the book was okay. So, and 3-4 years, not once in a while talking to him. 3-4 years of very regular interaction. So once you took up a project, the project was on. There was no on and off, right? Then there was another huge project that went on for a long time. It started with looking at asana practice and looking at allopathic medicine. It first started with a person called Abraham Verghese, who was a young student who's now become very famous. He's in America. And then we worked with Dr. Arjun Rajagopal, that many people would have met. And that was again for many years. And Desikachar was very involved with all of this. And me, Prabhakar, Mukundan, we would be working on this, and there'd be a lot of interaction. And in these interactions, the genuine curiosity in understanding and finding out was something that was quite patent, the way he would discuss with us and work with us. And one of the things that this led to was what Sridhar was mentioning, that Dr. T.M. Srinivasan was working with us. And so this whole study of, how do you take yoga and place it in a more or less scientific, rigorous context. So the whole thing, I think we worked for 3-4 years on this. And here again, we didn't dilute the yoga practice in any way. And Dr. Srinivasan, T.M. Srinivasan was also very open. So we could actually work with something where the core was kept alive, the core was respected, and there was a dialogue with some other mode. Yeah. The other memory that I had and was working with the first set of for the course, which is now, I think, taken a long stride. Your teacher training course. Yeah. The other day when I was rummaging through my papers, I actually saw one of the first drafts of it, and I gave it to Saras because he might use it a little more than my just keeping it as a memory thing. Yeah, so all of these working around were extremely powerful. There was a whole project of working with mentally challenged children, and that again was a huge learning. Yeah, so the entire, to me, it was something like, as close as it can get to a Gurukula in a modern context. Right, so it wasn't isolated, it wasn't allowed to get corrupted by the external context, but there was a way in which one was engaged with the fundamentals of yoga and engaged with the outside world through this process. Yeah. The other thing that I remembered was, the one thing that maybe was, something which I cherished, which was a little more exclusive to my interaction with him, was his interest in J. Krishnamurti. And I was also quite involved in J. Krishnamurti. So there were several times when we would discuss his dad, what Perivar brought to the teaching, and how it was similar to or different from what Krishnaji had to say. And these were times when Desikachar was not a teacher sitting there and teaching something. We were just examining something together, and there were questions and there were struggles in understanding something. So the whole context was, let's say, centered on inquiry, centered on concerns, centered on questions. And everything else that happened was, in a sense, aiding this central process. Yeah, so those are some of my recollections. I thought I'd just throw it open to questions rather than my go on with this. So any questions you people have, I'd be quite happy to see whatever I can remember or say. I'm not used to talking for too long. And in this case, I'd rather not. Pardon?
For any outside person, the importance of Yoga Sutra, how do we best bring it down?
Interesting. See, this again started as a project. Yeah, I was involved with a person called Pulin Garg, who's a fairly well-known professor from IIM Ahmedabad, who was working with the behavioral science. He's very well-known in that area, and I had started working with Pulin for something, and then I got Pulin to meet Desikachar. So then the whole idea of how do you understand the Yoga Sutras in a context which is relevant to the behavioral sciences was something that was very critical. And most of the work I'm doing now is actually a continuity of that. See, there are two or three things here. One is the understanding of the mind that you find in the Yoga Sutra is far more profound than what you have in Western psychology. Yeah? And so everything that human beings do comes from the human mind, right? So there is actually no space where it cannot be applied. Yeah, and if you go back to some of the texts like Bharatanatyam or Vastu Shastra or Artha Shastra, the initial qualifications will say that unless you're a yogi, you can't be a good sculptor. Unless you're a yogi, you can't be a good dancer and whatever. So what does the yogi there mean? It has to do with understanding your own mind, understanding other people's minds and things like that. So it's actually universally applicable. I don't think I go around telling people exactly, that this sutra is here, because most people are not interested. But if I had to, I can go back every single thing I'm doing today in process work or working with people's minds and behavior, I can relate it back to Yoga Sutra. And many of these, we actually discussed this with Desikachar. There's an unfinished book going on for a long time with Desikachar called Inner Work Through Yoga. I'll have to figure out now how to complete it now. Have I answered your question? Because when I'm starting, I'm going all over the place. I'm getting so many memories, I'm just going all over the place.
Everything, whenever we are interacting with anyone in the outside world, we immediately relate everything to Yoga Sutra, but then we also want to convey certain things which probably, I do not know how. We make use of Yoga Sutra while interacting with others, and somewhere we want to convey that message across also.
I'm saying that it's applicable in specific fields. Yeah, I'm working with leadership. The entire basis of my design of all leadership programs is from the Yoga Sutra. Of course, my entire study with T.M. Srinivasan was on the psychosomatic. See, we went into it saying that we will study psychosomatic illness and yoga. And then we discovered that 80% or more of doctors' visits are because of psychosomatic illnesses. You can't do an MS thesis in 3 years or 5 years on 80% of all disease, right? So we broke it down, and then we looked at only asana and pranayama, because the spine is the central body part to study when working with back pain. So it in a sense narrowed down what we could study and then worked with this. So yoga is absolutely applicable in this whole range. And if you see the modern work that's happening in neuro sciences and all that, the amount of relatedness between what happens in yoga, how yoga works in the mind, how it impacts the body and the mind, and what they study in neurosciences, it's highly related. Yeah, neurosciences is simply proving that Yoga Sutras is speaking the truth, and what yoga does is something profound. That's it. Might be given new names, yeah, but it's all. The new buzzword now is mindfulness, no? Yeah?
You had mentioned about this book, Religiousness in Yoga.
Yeah.
The SSR also had mentioned, where you had done the illustrations. Now, I can imagine those time where yoga was closely associated with a particular religion or a way of life as such, to a particular region as such, compared to how it is probably now. So, during that period, how was it that, what were the kind of scene and what did you people do to break that mindset?
See, I'm not sure I've understood the question. Those days sounds like, a few hundred years back. Yeah, just
no, the strong
30,
association.
40 years ago. So what do you mean by those days? If you can be clear.
Okay. The strong association of yoga with Hinduism or India as such. Here right now with yoga being popularized yoga, I'm saying within quotes, popularized in the West now rather than 50 years back. I'm saying how during that period, before the stalwarts of yoga had gone and spread it to the West, when it was very strongly associated to a particular region that is here, South, India, and also religion as such. So in that kind of a scenario, how was your experience with Sir working on yoga?
See, I think there's one thing, reason why I'm not very clear about what you're saying is, I don't think Desikachar ever related it specifically to a religion.
Yeah, that's precisely what Sir did not believe, but this environment around probably would have been different, is my assumption. So
I don't know about the environment around because I worked with him on the book, right? And the word religiousness here was not chosen by Desikachar, it was chosen by the Colgate University people. But the way the word is interpreted is not religion as in rituals or whatever, because the word religion also means how do you bring your forces, your abilities and your faculties into an integrated form. Yeah, religion actually means that. And the book is entirely about the inner processes, how the mind is working, how the various psyche is connected and things like that. So the book title, if you look at it from the question of religion, is a little misleading. So there was no, the book didn't have any engagement at all with what is generally called religion. It was entirely about the human mind. Yeah, religiosity and religiousness are not the same as religion. Even the word, even in English, it doesn't mean the same thing. And in any case, that's a big issue, na? Whether Hindu can actually be called a religion like the way other religions are called a religion. So what are you comparing it with? What's the question? But I don't think Desikachar ever got caught with this. And if I remember right, if he was asked specifically, he would refute. Because even in the Darshana, Yoga and Sankhya refute both Charvaka and Mimamsa, no? While they might accept the Vedas, they're not completely with it. And the Brahma Sutra also doesn't completely accept yoga. To me, what was important in that book was that actually talking about all of these, so-called religious things makes no sense. because the texts are telling you over and over again, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. So when it's already clear that it cannot be imagined, cannot be talked about, why waste time talking about it? Right? So what can I do? So through the practice of yoga, I can develop a mind which is capable of insightfully looking at reality. And I think the book is at one level simply talking about this process. And the book itself is a series of lectures, lots of questions and answers. It's a very differently structured book. I still think it's the best book on the subject. I don't know if it's available in the original form at all.
You were mentioning that you were involved in the original draft of the teacher training program.
Yeah.
And I think most of us in this room have either done the course or in the process of doing the course.
Yeah.
So, could you just share with us some of the thoughts that Sir had when he was envisioning of the course itself, or the way he was visualizing?
I wish I had those notes with me. Yeah. But anyway, whatever Saras and I were discussing, I think, was there anything in that was very different from what was happening later? I don't know, all the topics that were mentioned and everything. I don't think there's very much that was different. Maybe a lot more chanting is added now. I don't know the present course. I don't know what you're doing now. But what we had worked on was quite elaborate. Obviously there was a hell of a lot of asana practice and a whole lot of, why asanas and how do you design an asana and that part of it. There was some amount of biomechanics and, there was obviously Yoga Sutra. And lots of topics, I don't remember now. Whole set of things.
Actually, I was not really looking at the structure of the course, but in terms of what Sir had, vision for teacher or any particular thing that he was looking at. And the course is very elaborate even now, and there are a lot of things which we learn. But I was looking at, since you were involved with him in terms of drafting the entire course.
Mm-hmm. See, like I told you before, the central thing has never been to teach yoga. Also the book that I wrote with him, it's called Learning Through Yoga. The title was suggested by Desikachar. It was not my title. Okay, that gives you a very clear idea that yoga is a means, and what is it the means to, right? And if you look at Patanjali, if you look at whatever, it's a means to dealing with human sorrow. So the course, I don't think is designed to teach you yoga. It's designed to teach you how to be a yoga teacher. And if in being a yoga teacher you don't have concern about what is human, what kind of a yoga teacher are you? Yeah. So to me that is what remains as an underlying theme. Yeah?
Which sadly is a real concern, because with the innovations that you spoke of or you suggested to you, to a degree, I feel that that's a real concern, that the recent innovations that you suggested, the goal of yoga is being lost somewhat in the more recent teachings, not outside of India possibly, that the message that's being conveyed here this evening is relatively simple, you know, complex but simple. And yet, what we are learning or what's being taught is so much more contrived with as yoga becomes more popular and more diluted and taken away from a center core.
Have I got your question right? You're saying, as we're innovating, has it gone away from the core? Is that your question?
Yeah.
It's certainly.
It's actually more of a statement. It's more of a statement as well. That's my observation of it. On listening to your discussion, I'm hearing, something quite different than is being taught or being proposed to be taught in Europe.
I wouldn't know what's being taught in Europe and the US except what we see, and whatever we see makes me cringe. There seems to be, maybe it's got to do with this, that in the attempt to say that yoga is not religious, I think the way it is being put across is the opposite. It is not a-religious. I don't think Desikachar would ever say that it is not connected with a Vedic thought or the Gita or any of this, right? But it is not, obviously, I mean, Yoga Sutra doesn't mention Ishvara except once. And can I practice yoga without getting into the ritualistic part? I guess I can. But can I practice yoga without a sense of bhakti to something larger? No, I don't think you can. Because if the moment you take away this relationship between me and a larger other, what the word yoga doesn't mean anything. Because the word yoga itself means that there is something in me that has to relate to something else. And what is this something else? Maybe it's something just beyond me, because Desikachar would often simply say, just apraptasya prapti yogam, which means that which I haven't been able to do today, if I can reach, is yoga. But that's just a pointer to a direction. It's not the end. So touching my toes is not the end of yoga. That's just an analogy. It's an example. So I have to keep extending myself, my relationship with things around me, and sooner or later any thinking human being has to wonder about something else. Yeah? I'm not sure I've got you, but this is what you triggered me on to, so I'm just sharing that.
Following her question, like about the West and the way we are dealing with yoga, what do you think about group teachings like we have in the West? Because as far as I know, Krishnamacharya tradition works more private sessions, like one-to-one, teacher to student. And in the West, that is more rare. So normally we are having like more and more bigger classes. So the way where the teachers teach to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 people at the same time. What do you think about that?
See, I mean, it's not as though we don't teach any group classes here, we do. Yeah. But, I mean, we always did, not that we didn't do it. But, see, if I'm looking at some of these central ideas, that as a teacher, can I really help an individual touch what is special in them and help that to grow? I cannot do it in a group class. Yeah. So if you ask me, would I like to teach a group class? No. Have I taught? Yes, I do. So when I go to teach leadership, there are 25 participants out there. I cannot teach 25 hours of individual lessons to them. So I teach them something in a group and then try to work with many of the concepts through a 5-6 day intensive work. Is that the best way of teaching yoga? I don't think so. But is that something we have to do today? I guess so. Because what can you do? Right? But if you're making that an end and saying that that is yoga, and if you don't own up to yourself at least that it's a compromise, I think there's a problem. Because I certainly think it's a compromise. And especially if I have older people in the class, what I'm teaching, the common minimum that I'm teaching is really simple. Yeah, and I don't know if teaching asana is teaching yoga. Because today, asana is equal to yoga. It's certainly not.
We are doing a lot for the corporates, we are doing a lot in schools or training teachers. They organize with family programs. Because, yeah, thanks. Most of the time,
Ask again.
family programs. A person in the family might be learning something from you, but the whole family is not getting involved in it at all. So sometimes there is a missing things back at home.
I don't know. My family, my wife has studied with Desikachar and Menaka. My children studied with Desikachar, with Krishnamacharya. My mother studied, my aunts, everybody in my family has studied either with Desikachar or with Krishnamacharya.
But it's not happening in every family. So
I don't know if it has to happen as a family. Why does it have to happen as a family?
there's something missing back at home. When we are here, it's late.
Then start one, no? Start a family program. What is? I wouldn't know how to teach asana practice to 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and 35, 40-year-olds in the same class.
Not the same, but the force of pulling them together.
Good idea. So start, let's see. See, most of the ideas that came up, like even this thing about teaching people, mentally challenged people. A friend of mine came up and said, can you do something like this? So I went and talked to Desikachar. So he said, what do you think something like this can be done? So I said, okay, let's try. So we met up with Jayachandran and he said, what can you do? So if I remember right, what I told him was, he asked a very strange question. He said, what is this yoga you're talking about? Can you make a child who's not mentally okay into some normal person? So I remember, I think I told him, that's not the idea of yoga, but I can certainly help the child become the best that the child can be. Right? That seems to have convinced him. So what did we do first? We had about 4 or 5 children who I taught. Yeah? And then we worked out something and Desikachar liked what we had done, and then we said, okay, let's take it to the general teaching. So then we evolved it saying that, look, as a yoga teacher, I cannot, I don't understand the issues. So we taught the teachers who were teaching people who were not well. And through that, so we would be helping this, see what's happening to the kid, right? and then teach the teacher. All this evolved, no? We didn't start with that. So if I have to answer to you something like what Desikachar might have answered, start, we'll see what happens and then work with it. Which means you have to pay a lot of attention to what is happening, feel through and move it.
Somehow you caught me correct. Actually, I am also a student of Jayachandran and I work with children mentally challenged. So the context was the same as I was asking. The child is being taught yoga, but the child doesn't do the same thing at home because others in the family do not know about it. So it's totally absent there, back at home. So how do we involve the family back here?
I don't know. I don't think whatever I work with a lot of people with, so-called psychological issues and all that. I don't think you can ever teach somebody who doesn't have a question to start with. If somebody is not saying, can you help me through yoga, or I have an issue, what can you do about it? I don't think I can go and tell them, you know what, you should do this because it's good for you. I don't think it will work. In whatever examples I'm giving, it worked because there was interest from the person who was learning. Yeah, so I don't know how it will be possible to induce somebody. They're not having an orientation if they don't have a question. One more question. Okay.
This might be a strange question. We know that Sir inspired people of all ages to take up asana, pranayama and other such practices by introducing modifications appropriate to their requirements. So in the context of Yama and Niyama, what was his approach?
In the context of Yama and Niyama, his approach was very simple. There's first thing that comes to my mind was there's a friend of mine who had a hand tremor. Right? He had gone to several doctors and all that, nothing happened. And then he said, I think yoga will help. So we met Desikachar, and this guy used to smoke 40 cigarettes a day. We started asana and pranayama practice, and he was a sportsman, so one could challenge him with the kind of postures that were being given, and within about 3-4 months he had almost stopped smoking completely. I don't ever remember Desikachar saying, don't do this, don't do that, except for food. Advice on food. I don't remember his ever telling anybody who came, you shouldn't smoke, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. Right. So I guess if you teach the person the right thing for their health, these are effects that ought to start happening. Right. And at some point of time, then the student starts asking you something more. Yeah. So I don't think any attempt to talk about something like Yama and Niyama without the question arising from the person is going to make any difference. Even in children's classes, I don't think he ever said, don't do this, don't do that. But I guess as a yoga teacher, he would expect you to have discipline. Yeah, because one of the things I remember Krishnamacharya also saying is that while you're teaching, there's actually a transfer of power. And a lot of the asana practice that you do, all the yoga practice that you do, is to make sure that I don't contaminate the student in my relationship. So if you're asking me as a yoga teacher, I would say if you don't have a certain basis, you ought not to be teaching. Yeah? Okay. Thank you.
Only Samhita. Only Samhita. Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Om Tatsavituhu Saviturvarenyam Varenyam Bhargaha Bhargo Devasya Devasya Dhimahi Dhimahiti Dhimahi Dhiyo Yaha Yonaha Na Prachodayat Prachodayaditi Prachodayat. Om Tatsavitus Savitus Tatsavituhu Saviturvarenyam Varenyagum Savitus Saviturvarenyam Varenyam Bhargo Bhargo Varenyam Varenyam Bhargaha Bhargo Devasya Devasya Bhargo Bhargo Devasya Devasya Dhimahi Dhimahi Devasya Devasya Dhimahi Dhimahiti Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Yo Dhiyo Dhiyo Yaha Yo No No Yo Yo Naha Na Prachodayat Prachodayano Na Prachodayat Prachodayaditi Prachodayat.
Thank you very much.